The rain hit the metal roof of Outpost Delta like falling knives. Dark clouds covered the alien sky, making the whole world look gray. Cold wind blew through the open field, where soldiers stood in silence. And in the middle of that field, tied to a post, stood a girl not human, not free, and not safe. Her skin was a soft shade of violet, glowing faintly in the rain. Her eyes, wide and golden, stared at the humans who watched her like she was a ticking bomb. Her clothes were torn, soaked, and barely hanging on her thin body. She looked scared, but not broken, and no one dared to move closer. They didn't know where she came from. They only knew she was left outside the base with a simple message. The gift is yours. You dare to keep her. Lieutenant Mason stood at the edge of the group, watching the girl shiver. He didn't like this. A gift from a hostile alien. Race usually meant death, or worse, but something in the girl's eyes, something quiet, something lost, made him step forward. "Mason, don't," warned Sergeant Keller. Gripping his rifle tight, "She could be a spy, or a living bomb." "I know," Mason said softly. "But she's freezing." He grabbed a towel from the supply bin near the med tent. It was old, faded, but warm. He walked through the rain, each step slow, every soldier watching him like he was mad. The girl didn't move, didn't blink. Her eyes followed him, like she was waiting for something big to happen. Mason stopped just in front of her. She was soaked from head to toe. Her lips trembled. But she didn't speak. He slowly raised the towel and gently draped it over her shoulders. What happened next froze the entire outpost. The girl gasped sharp and loud as if the towel was made of lightning. She stared down at the cloth, touching it like it was gold. Then, without warning, she dropped to her knees in the mud. Her hands held the towel close to her chest like it was life itself. Her head bowed, and she began whispering in a strange language, voice shaking. Mason blinked, confused. "I was just trying to help," he muttered. But the girl looked up at him with wide eyes filled with awe and said a single word that echoed through the translator. "Bonded." The translator crackled again, repeating the word, "bonded, bonded." The soldiers backed away, whispering among themselves, "Did she just say what I think she said? Bonded. What does that mean? Did Mason just marry her with a towel?" Mason stepped back, unsure what just happened. The girl stood up slowly, the towel still wrapped tightly around her. She bowed deeply to Mason, then fell in line behind him, refusing to move until he did. When he stepped forward, she followed. When he stopped, she stopped. When someone tried to approach her, she hissed like a cornered cat and clung to the towel. That night, Mason sat in the command room, soaked and tired. Elie, that's what the girl called herself, was now inside the base. She refused to eat unless Mason touched the food first. She refused to sleep unless he was near. The base AI struggled to understand her speech, but one word kept repeating: guardian, chosen, warmth. Mason looked at the towel now hanging over the heater, drying slowly. He didn't know what it meant to her, but clearly, it meant everything. A message came in from Orbiton. Alien ship had left the system right after dropping her off. No name, no warning, just a final signal. You touched what you do not understand. Mason leaned back, staring at the screen. Outside, the rain kept falling, and in the next room, a quiet alien girl slept with a towel over her heart, as if it was the only thing keeping her alive, and maybe, just maybe it was. The morning came with thick fog around the base. The ground was still wet from last night's storm, and inside the main hallway, soldiers whispered in small groups. They all talked about the same thing: the alien girl and the towel. Lieutenant Mason sat alone in the dining hall, sipping weak coffee. His mind was still spinning. He had seen many strange things during the war, but never had a towel changed the course of his life like this. A soft knock came from the door. It opened slowly, and Elia stepped in, her bare feet silent, her posture low and respectful. She still wore the towel like a cloak, her glowing eyes focused only on him. She moved forward without saying a word. Then suddenly she dropped to her knees in front of him. She pressed her forehead to the ground and began whispering again. Her voice was soft, full of emotion. The translator struggled to keep up. Guardian, warmth giver, life bond, sacred one. Mason stood up quickly. Alarmed, he looked around, hoping no one else had seen this Elia. Get up, he said, gently placing a hand on her shoulder. But she didn't move. Instead, she reached up, took his hand, and placed it on her forehead. The translator sparked again. Claim accepted, it said. Bond confirmed. What bond? Mason asked out loud. Can someone explain this? The base AI chimed in from the wall panel. I have processed 63% of the dialect. It said the towel gesture is considered a ceremonial act on her planet. It is used during sacred bonding rituals between protectors and the protected. By giving her warmth, you have performed the first offering. Mason stared at the AI screen. That wasn't a ritual. He said, it was just kindness. The AI responded, intent does not change meaning in her culture. She has chosen you. Colonel Reeves entered the room, holding a tablet. His face was grim. We just got a ping from a diplomatic scout ship, he said. The girl. She's not just anyone. Mason narrowed his eyes. Who is she? She's royalty, Reeves said, or what's left of it. Her people were overthrown decades ago, thought to be extinct. She's their last surviving heir. Mason sat down again, this time slowly. His hand still felt warm from where Elia touched it. Why would they send her to us? He asked. Reeves sighed. That's the part that worries me. They sent her with a note calling her a gift, but maybe she's more like a trap. They want to see how we handle her. Maybe judge if humans are worthy allies or enemies. Elia looked up at Mason, still on her knees. Her voice came out soft but strong. I am yours, if you accept. I serve, protect, and follow. Mason didn't know what to say. All of this over a towel. But deep down, something told him this wasn't just about cloth. It was about meaning, about survival, about connection. Later that day, Elia was given new clothes, but she refused to wear them unless the towel stayed on top. The med team tried to scan her, but she growled and shook her head until Mason entered the room. The moment he stepped inside, she relaxed, letting the scan begin. She even smiled for the first time, a small, quiet smile that reached her golden eyes. Back in the control room, the translation software reached 85% completion. More words became clear. More meaning made sense. She had been trained since birth to serve a guardian if ever chosen. The towel was a sacred trigger. Once touched with warmth by another, she belonged to that person for life. Mason leaned on the table, staring at the screen. He didn't ask for this. He didn't want a servant, a follower, or a bond. But now she trusted him more than anyone else in the galaxy. He looked out the window. Elia stood outside in the sun, arms raised, smiling softly as the towel fluttered behind her like a cape. She looked free, but also ready, like a protector waiting for command. He whispered to himself, this is bigger than me. But deep down, he already knew. From now on, wherever he went, she would follow. And in her eyes, he wasn't just a man. He was the one who gave warmth in the cold. And to her people, that made him more than a hero, that made him sacred. The night was quiet on Outpost Delta, but inside the command center, lights flashed and machines worked without rest. Lieutenant Mason stood in front of a large screen, arms crossed, eyes sharp. Next to him, the base AI finished its deep language analysis. A single sentence blinked on the screen, glowing bright. The offering of warmth signals eternal service and sacred bond. Mason let out a slow breath. So it's real. he whispered. This isn't just cultural confusion behind him. Sergeant Keller watched the feed from the medbay. Elia sat calmly on a small bed, still wrapped in the towel like it was armor. She was silent, but her eyes never blinked, always alert. Always focused on the door, the AI continued, according to Varlunan belief. The towel is not simply cloth. It is considered a soul wrap, a sign of absolute trust between to spirits. To offer it with warmth and touch is to awaken the ancient code. What is the code? Mason asked. The AI answered, it is a set of old rules, followed only by the royal class of the Varlunan people. Once bonded, the guardian cannot reject the chosen, unless the bond is broken with blood. Mason turned his eyes away. From the screen, this was more than he had signed up for. But the worst part was, he didn't want to reject her. Something about her presence felt right, like she belonged at his side. Colonel Reeves walked in with a datapad. We received a strange message from deep space, he said, encrypted in Varlunan code. What does it say? Mason asked. Reeves looked uneasy. Returned the bonded heir within 3 solar days. Or face the Wrathfire. The room fell silent. Wrathfire that wasn't just a warning. It was an ancient punishment, a form of holy war, used only when sacred. Laws were broken. Keller stepped forward. This isn't just a girl anymore, he said. She's the key to something much bigger. Mason clenched his jaw. Then we protect her, that night. Mason visited Elia in the medical bay. She looked up as soon as he entered, her face lighting up. She stood and placed a hand over her chest. Bowing slightly, Guardian, she said, her voice soft but steady. Why me? Mason asked, why not any of the others? Elia looked into his eyes. You gave warmth. Without command, without reason, she paused, then added, you chose without knowing. That makes the bond pure. She sat down and began drawing symbols on the wall with her fingers. They glowed faintly, patterns of stars, planets, and something that looked like a throne. This is the code, she explained. It is only told to royal blood, and the one who holds their soul. Mason watched in silence. The towel still hung over her shoulders, glowing faintly in the moonlight, as if it had absorbed some kind of power. Or maybe it just reflected hers. Elia turned and touched his hand. Gently, others will come, she said. Some will want to break the bond. They will try to kill you. Mason nodded. Let them come, he said. I'm not leaving you. The next day, a ship appeared on the edge of the system. It didn't broadcast any signal, didn't ask for permission. It simply waited, like a predator in the dark. The base went into high alert, shields up, guns charged inside the war room. Reeves spoke with Mason. You know, they want her back, right? He said, she's their heir, not ours. Mason stared at the screen. She chose us, he replied. I won't hand her over like cargo. Reeves shook his head. Then be ready to fight a religion. Later, Elia approached Mason with something in her hand. It was a small metal circle covered in markings. She placed it on his chest, stuck, glowing with golden light. This is the mark of the code. She said, no one can harm you now. Not while I breathe. From that moment, things changed. Soldiers who once feared her now nodded in respect. She began training in the yard. Using strange but graceful fighting moves, her strength was more than physical. It was like energy flowed through her body from the towel itself. Mason watched her from a distance. He no longer saw a scared alien girl. He saw a warrior, a symbol, and something else too. A beginning. She turned to look at him, smiled, and said, we are not finished, Guardian. This is just the start. And he believed her. Asterisk. The stars above Outpost Delta blinked like quiet eyes. But inside the base, no one felt calm. Tension filled every hallway. The unknown ship still hovered at the edge of the system, waiting, and Alu, The alien girl who once stood shivering in the rain was now at the center of everything. Lieutenant Mason stood in the command room, arms crossed. Watching her on the monitor, she was no longer quiet or afraid. She walked like a soldier, stood like a leader, and spoke with authority. Even the towel she wore now looked like a royal sash, not just a piece of cloth. The base AI chimed. New translation unlocked from Varlunan data. Towel of bonding. May awaken bloodline memory if gifted by one with a pure spirit. Mason raised an eyebrow. Bloodline memory. The AI explained. Ancient Varlunan royals could store genetic memory in their bodies. Once the bonding ritual is activated, by an act of warmth, the heir can recall hidden knowledge passed down through blood. Mason's eyes widened. Wait. Is she unlocking something inside herself? Because of me? Before the AI could respond, the door opened. Elia entered. Walking with a strange glow around her, she looked directly at Mason, her eyes brighter than before. I remember now. She said softly, my mother's last words. They were locked in my blood. Now I hear them again. Mason stepped closer. What did she say? Elia placed a hand on her chest. She said, if you ever meet a soul who gives warmth without price, open the path and lead them home. Mason felt the weight of her words. He understood now this wasn't just about a ritual. It was destiny. He hadn't just saved a girl. He had awakened a royal code lost for centuries. Elia moved to the center of the room and knelt. She opened her palm, and from it, a glowing symbol rose into the air. It hovered above the table, spinning. A map old and forgotten showing star systems no human had ever charted. This is the true empire, she said. My people never died. They scattered, hiding in silence, but now, the code has been awakened, and they will come. Colonel Reeves entered the room and stopped in his tracks when he saw the floating map. What is that? He asked. Elia looked at him. With calm strength, the last map of Varluna's royal vaults. Hidden in my blood, unlocked by the bond. Reeves glanced at Mason. Eyes wide. You had no idea, did you? Mason shook his head slowly. I just gave her a towel. Reeves chuckled under his breath. Yeah, and now you're holding the keys to a forgotten empire. Suddenly, the alarm blared. A drone patrol had spotted movement's mall ships leaving. The strange vessel at the system's edge. 10 unidentified crafts. Approaching fast, no signal, no words, just silent movement. Reeves gave the order. Shields up, weapons ready. I want a response team on standby, but Elia stepped forward and raised her hand. No weapons, she said firmly. Let me speak first. She walked to the com station, her towel trailing behind like a royal banner. She pressed her hand to the control pad, and her voice echoed through the system by ancient code of Varluna. I, Elia Talshara, heir to the broken crown. Speak to the shadows who come. If you seek war, you will find none here. But if you seek truth, then kneel before the warmth you forgot. There was silence. Then, one by one, the approaching ships slowed, stopped, and lowered their weapons. The monitor blinked. A message appeared. We hear you, child of the towel. We remember the code. The base crew was speechless. Even Reeves looked stunned. He turned to Mason, half laughing, half shocked. I can't believe it. They're standing down because she spoke with a towel on her shoulders. Mason replied quietly, It's not the towel, sir. It's what it meant to her. That night, Elia and Mason sat outside the base, staring at the stars. The air was calm, the threat gone for now. She leaned against him, the towel still around her shoulders. This towel saved me, she whispered. It gave me back my memories. My name, my people. Mason smiled gently. I didn't mean to give you a kingdom, he said. Just warmth. Elia nodded slowly. That's why it worked. They sat in silence as the wind moved softly around them. Above, stars blinked in patterns older than memory. and beneath them, two lives, human and alien, sat, joined by one simple gift, a towel, and everything it awakened. The sky above Outpost Delta was full of ships now. They did not fire, they did not speak. They just floated there, watching, waiting, silent like old ghosts returning home. Inside the base, tension ran like electricity through the walls. Humans and machines worked overtime, unsure if peace had arrived, a war in disguise. Lieutenant Mason stood at the edge of the landing pad. Beside him was Elia, dressed in ceremonial armor crafted by the base's engineers. But over the armor, she still wore the towel. It hung like a sash of honor, a symbol no translator could explain, but all felt its power. Colonel Reeves approached them, jaw tight. "They're asking to speak face to face," he said, "but not with us, with her." Mason looked at Elia. "Are you ready?" Elia nodded once, eyes calm. "I was born ready," she whispered, "but the towel gives me courage." The meeting was arranged outside, under the open stars. 10 alien envoys stepped out from a sleek black ship. Their armor shone like glass, and their faces were covered. But the way they moved showed caution, not aggression. Elia walked forward, alone, her towel catching the wind like a banner. The envoys saw her, and one by one, they knelt. All except one. A tall figure at the back did not kneel. He stepped forward and removed his mask. His face was scarred, his eyes sharp with old pain. "You wear the cloth of the guardian bond," he said. "But do you even know what it means?" Elia stood tall. "I do," she said. "I lived it," the scarred one growled. "Then you also know what it costs." He turned to the human soldiers standing nearby. "She belongs to us by code, by blood, by law." Mason took a step forward, his hand near his weapon. "She belongs to no one," he said. "She chooses her own path." The scarred envoy raised his hand, signaling an order. Soldiers from his ship moved forward, weapons not drawn but ready. Tension grew like a thick fog. One wrong word could mean fire. Elia raised her voice, clear and strong. "Stand down," she said in her native tongue. The translator echoed the message in every ear. "I speak with the voice of Tal Shara." Last of the royal blood, she removed her towel slowly, held it high above her head. "This was given in warmth, with no request for loyalty, but I gave loyalty anyway." She wrapped the towel around her arm. "This sacred way, this is not weakness, Siddha's choice." The scarred envoy hesitated, but then shouted, "You are broken. You share our blood with outsiders." He pointed at Mason, a human lesser blood. Mason didn't move, but his voice was steady, funny. "Your ships didn't stop her, her towel did." The soldiers around the envoy began to shift uneasily, one by one. They looked at Eliant with anger but with quiet respect. They remembered the old codes, the lost teachings. They remembered what warmth used to mean before politics and fear poisoned it. Suddenly, the scarred envoy pulled a blade from his side and charged forward. In one swift motion, Elia spun. Using the towel as a binding weapon, the blade clanged against her armor. But her countermove was perfect. She wrapped the towel around his arm and twisted, bringing him to his knees. "You attack your bonded heir," she asked, calm but fierce. "Then you are no brother of mine." She released him. Stepping back as he gasped, the other envoys dropped to their knees fully now. "We follow the code," one said. "Even when we forget it, the cloth remembers." Back at the base, Colonel Reeves whispered to Mason. "She just stopped a war with a towel and a flip." Mason chuckled under his breath. Best use of laundry in galactic history. Later that night, the alien envoys joined the humans for a formal meeting. Treaties were discussed, rules rewritten, alliances shaped from old wounds, and in the center of it all sat Ellie with the towel folded neatly in her lap, a symbol of what was lost when what could be found again. After the talks, Mason found Elia sitting quietly by the windows. "You all right?" he asked. She smiled faintly. "They wanted to fight. I gave them choice. You gave them hope," Mason replied, wrapped in cotton. She laughed softly. "I told you, Guardian, it was never just a towel." He nodded, sitting beside her. "No," he said. It was a beginning, and somewhere out there, the stars continued to shine, brighter than war, stronger than fear. Guided by one simple thing, a bond no one understood until it was too powerful to break. Outpost Delta was no longer just a human base. It had become something more sacred ground to those who remembered the code of our Luna. Ships came not for battle, but for pilgrimage. Aliens from distant systems asked to see the Guardian. Not the war hero, not the soldier, but the man who gave warmth with no demand in return. Lieutenant Mason had no idea what to do with that title. He had fought in 5 planetary wars, but this was new. He had become a symbol without trying. And he hated symbols. They usually got people killed. But still, he stood by Elia. And she who once trembled in the rain now walked as the true heir to a lost star bloodline. Her towel was now trimmed in silver thread, a gift from her people. And when she wore it, even the most stubborn alien bowed their heads. One calm evening, the air was still, too still. Mason stood on the tower, watching the alien skies. Elia was with the scholars in the dome, sharing her visions of a united galaxy. But something gnawed at the edge of his mind. Something felt wrong. Suddenly, alarms wailed. A breach in the west hangar. No ID code. Security bots activated. Soldiers ran, but it was too late. The assassin had already reached the inner chambers. Cloaked in a black void suit, silent like a shadow, he passed guards like smoke and headed straight for Elia. Mason heard the alert and sprinted down the corridor. "Where is she?" he shouted. The AI responded. "Dome sector, with no protection. Estimated time to breach 42 seconds. That was too long. Mason didn't wait for backup, grabbed his sidearm and ran harder than ever before. Inside the dome, Elia stood. By the old archives, she had no weapons, no guards, just scrolls of memory. She heard the sound behind her, soft, fast, deadly. And then she saw it, gleaming steel, raised toward her heart. But she didn't run. She didn't scream. She moved not backward, forward, just as the blade fell. She twisted her body and shoved the assassin away from her scrolls. The weapon cut. Across her side, red glowing blood spilled across the silver towel. She cried out, but not in fear, in rage. Mason burst through the glass door and saw her fall. He fired, striking the assassin in the chest once, twice, 3 times. The figure collapsed without a word. A clean death for a silent killer. Mason dropped to his knees, pulling Elia into his arms. Her face was pale, blood soaking into the towel. "No, no, no, stay with me," he whispered. Elia smiled faintly, her hand weakly touching his cheek. "I protected the bond," she said softly. "I remember now, my mother. She said the Guardian must be protected, even if it ends me." Mason shook his head, holding her tighter. "I didn't save you for you to save me." Reeves and the med team arrived. Seconds later, they rushed her to emergency care. But the machines couldn't read her blood fast enough. They needed something more, something ancient. Something human minds didn't fully understand. That night, Mason made a choice. He went to the lab and activated Earth's forbidden tech and experimental healing core. Illegal in most sectors, it's unstable, the AI warned. "Success rate is 32%. I'll take it," Mason growled. "She took a knife for me. Now I give her time." The core fused with the med system, surging power into the surgical arms. Energy flooded the room, bright enough to blind, and in that light, Elia breathed again. Slow, shallow, but alive. Hours passed, then she opened her eyes. The first thing she saw was Mason, asleep in the chair beside her, holding the blood-stained towel in both hands. She reached out, weakly touching his fingers. "I live," she whispered. Mason woke with a jerk, then smiled wider than he ever had. "Yeah, you do," he said, "and I swear you're never getting stabbed again." She laughed. "Even though it hurt, I would do it again. Because you gave warmth. And I gave everything." Mason gently placed the towel back over her chest. Not just cloth now, but a holy relic, drenched in pain, power, an unbreakable bond. And in that room, quiet and dim, the soldier and the alien girl shared a truth no one could measure, that sometimes the smallest gift can awaken the strongest love, and sometimes the one who gave warmth becomes the one who needs it most. A soft breeze moved through the gardens of the Galactic Council Hall. Strange flowers bloomed under twin suns, their petals glowing like fire and ice. And in the center of it all, two figures walked side by side, one human, one alien. Both changed. Both healed, both carrying a bond the galaxy now respected. Feared and honored, Lieutenant Mason wore the new uniform of Earth's first diplomatic guard. Not a soldier anymore, but something greater, a bridge between worlds. Beside him walked Elia Talshera, no longer just a lost heir, now crowned emissary of Varluna. Her silver-trimmed towel still draped proudly across her shoulders. No longer just cloth, now a flag of peace. Crowds gathered on the polished sky platform. Delegates from every known system stood in silence. Even the Wraith, who once hunted her people, stood with heads bowed. The council speaker, an ancient being with translucent skin and 4 eyes, raised its voice. "Today, we witness not a treaty signed with blood, but one born from kindness. We honor the first offering, and the human who gave warmth." Without knowing what it meant, Mason stepped forward, unsure of what to say. He cleared his throat, looked around, and then looked at Elia. Only she mattered. "Really, I didn't mean to change anything," Abbess began, voice steady but low. "I just saw someone cold and scared, and I gave her something warm." That simple act somehow awakened a sleeping code. A broken world and a future none of us saw coming. He turned toward the crowd. "I'm not a legend. I'm not royalty," he said, "but I believe kindness should be louder than weapons, and if a towel can start peace between species, maybe we should be handing them out more often." There was silence, then a wave of soft laughter. Not mocking, but real. Genuine smiles spread across faces of dozens of alien races. The tension of centuries cracked a little that day. Elia stepped up beside him, her voice strong like her mother's memory. "The code is ancient, but not perfect," she said. "It needed to be reminded of what it was built on, not control, but care." She looked toward Mason. "I was lost, forgotten, and thrown away, but a human saw me. Not as a weapon, not as a danger, but as a girl in the rain." She paused, holding up the towel for all to see. "This," she said, "is the symbol of our beginning. It is the fabric of a bond, built not on fear, but on faith." Thunderous applause followed. Even the scarred envoy from before now, wearing robes of honor, nodded with respect. The old guards of Varluna had accepted the new age, because of her, because of him, because of something as simple as a towel. After the ceremony, as the stars began to rise in the twin sky, Elia and Mason sat in a quiet chamber. No guards, no politics, no pressure. Just them. She reached into a small crystal box and took out the original towel, now repaired, cleaned, and embroidered with gold thread. She placed it gently in his lap. "It belongs to you now," she whispered. "I wore it for strength, but it was yours from the beginning." Mason shook his head, smiling. "No, you keep it," he said. "It's your symbol, She leaned closer, resting her head against his shoulder. Then we share it, she said. Like we share everything now. He laughed softly. Guess we're stuck with each other, huh? She nodded, eyes closed, forever, guardian, outside. The stars moved slowly across the sky. Peace, for once, felt real. Ships came and went in gentle patterns. Trade began to flourish. Old enemies talked. New songs were sung. And at the heart of it all was a human man who offered warmth. And a Varlunan girl who gave the galaxy back its soul. In time, children would learn the story in schools. Not as myth but as truth. The Towel Treaty, they called it. The day peace began with cloth and compassion, and while others wrote books and debated its meaning, Mason and Delia knew the truth. It wasn't the towel that changed everything. It was the hand that offered it tanned, the heart that accepted it.